An ancient dragon gets his subscription to life canceled by the champion of the humans, and he can't understand why because as far as he can remember, he has never had beef with humans before. In fact, on many occasions, he has gone out of his way to help humanity, so he at least wants to know what led them to do this, but the humans refuse to give him an answer. The dragon assumes that the humans are killing him for selfish reasons, and to be honest, he has lived long enough as it is, so he isn't going to fight back against them. As the dragon crumbles to dust, he asks the Grim Reaper to take his soul to the underworld so he can finally rest, but the Grim Reaper said nah and stuffed his soul in a baby instead. The dragon opens his eyes to find his new parents and older brother looking down at him, and from what he understands, they decided to name him Dallin. Years go by, and despite the fact that he was once killed by humans, Dallin grows up to become a fine young man who cares deeply for the village he grew up in. In this world, agriculture is basically the only industry, so every morning, Dallin gets up and works in the fields to earn his daily bread. In this village, you're considered an adult at the age of 15, and since Dallin is now 16, he moved out of his parents' house and now lives on his own and takes care of himself. He's out fishing one day with his older brother when he is reminded that tomorrow is the day he plans to head to the swamp to investigate the recent occurrences there. Dallin says he remembers, and he still intends to do it because all the lizards in the swamp mysteriously disappeared a month ago, and someone needs to figure out why before something bad happens. That may be true, but his brother sees no reason why Dallin should have to go since that's usually the job of the garrison. And Dallin agrees that he normally wouldn't have to do it, but Captain Balin and the others are already busy enough guarding the village, so he doesn't want to bother them with something like this. In that case, Dallin's brother offers to go with him to make sure he's safe, but Dallin says Riz won't be necessary. A few moments later, Dallin catches the first fish of the day, so the brothers end the conversation, and by the time they are done fishing, Dallin has gotten quite a large haul. Takes his catch back to the village so he can show his friends Melita and Albert, and while they are impressed with the catch, they are concerned that Dallin was out fishing instead of preparing for his mission. But Dallin tells them they don't need to worry because he has been preparing little by little over the course of the past few days. Speaking of which, Dallin wants to thank Melita for her help because he would have had a hard time convincing the village chief to let him go. She says she was happy to help, and Dallin was the one who trained her in the first place, so she knows he is more than capable of coming back safely. Dallin asks if Melita and Albert have any plans for the day, so Melita tells him that she plans to take the children out for a brief training session later today, but she says he doesn't need to worry about them since he has enough to deal with already. So Dallin heads home so he can prepare the fish. While gutting and salting the fish, Dallin thinks about how the village can afford to hire enough guards to keep the entire place safe, so all the villagers are expected to chip in to ensure everyone's safety. Just then, Era comes up to Dallin's window and reminds him that he's supposed to have magic practice today. Dallin had completely forgotten about it, so he thanks Era for coming all the way out here to remind him, so he and Era go head over to Dallin's magic instructor's house, and once there, Dallin prepared to demonstrate his offensive magic. He chants a spell, and within a few moments, a powerful energy bolt is fired from his hand, completely destroying the target in front of him. The magic instructor praises Dallin for his excellent offense, and there's not much for her to teach him anymore regarding that, but as it stands, Dallin still sucks with medicine, so she's going to spend a lot of time teaching that. Later that evening, Dallin is in the town square when he meets a young girl with flowing white hair. The village chief introduces her to him and says she will be staying in the village for a while, but he also warns Dallin that she's a noble lady, so he should be on his best behavior around her. The girl tells Dallin that her name is Christina and extends her hand to shake his, and as they shook hands, Dallin could immediately tell that Christina was an incredibly skilled fighter. After she's gone, Dallin takes a little walk while reminiscing on all the things he has learnt since he became a human. As a dragon, he never had to worry about things like this, but as a human, there is a serious threat of freezing to death in the winter, as well as the risk of heat stroke during the summer, so he has to be careful of his environment. Dallin soon arrives at his parents' home and they greet him warmly, along with his younger brother Marco. Dallin brought a bunch of ingredients with him, so his mom takes it all and prepares a wonderful dinner for the family to enjoy. Dallin really enjoys it since he has missed his mom's cooking, and his father suggests that Dallin should find a wife who's good at cooking, so he can enjoy meals like this all the time. This isn't the first time Dallin has heard this, and he's not entirely opposed to the idea of getting married, but he's going to stick with this single life a little while longer. Marco asks him if he's still going to investigate that swamp tomorrow, and Dallin doesn't think it's a big deal. But his mother is really worried because not only is the swamp really far from here, but the road is also known to be dangerous. However, Dallin assures her that he won't be taking any risks, so there's no reason to be so worried about him. His dad tells him that he is an adult, so he is free to make any decision he chooses, but all he asks is that Dallin makes sure he comes back safely to them. The next day, as Dallin is about to set off on his journey, the entire village comes out to see him off. He thinks this is a little excessive for a send-off, but Balin says this is the least he can do for Dallin when he is taking on a job for him. In all honesty, Balin still feels like he should be the one going instead, but Melita reminds him that if he's gone and the village gets attacked by a monster, then there would be no one here to stop it. Everyone wants to do something to help Dallin out, so the resident nun Letitia goes up to him and offers a small blessing for his protection, and Gary gives him a bento box so he doesn't go hungry out there. They then wish him luck on his trip, and Dallin sets out to investigate the swamp. The lizards that used to live in the swamp would periodically interact with Dallin's village, but one day they suddenly disappeared. Dallin couldn't just ignore such a strange occurrence, so he volunteered to investigate so he can figure out what happened. But he was a bit anxious as to what he might find out here. Once Dallin arrives at the swamp, he uses his hand to feel the surrounding area, and he immediately figures out why the lizards all had to leave. The earth elemental's power has been growing too strong lately, and the water elemental's power has been weakening. Just then, Dallin hears some rustling in the bushes, and he is put on edge because, with the current condition of the swamp, only a powerful monster could survive here. However, as he readies his blade, he is shocked to find a Lamia slithering behind him. Lamias aren't usually seen around here, but as strange as it may be for her to be here, she's definitely a smash. The Lamia asks Dallin if he's alone, and Dallin confirms that he came by himself, which relieves the Lamia, because what she's about to do would be embarrassing if there were other people here. She tries to remember what her mother taught her to do, and from what she remembers, she's supposed to use a charm spell and then do a bunch of movements, but she doesn't remember how to do it right. Dallin is more confused than he is charmed, but the Lamia carries on to tell him that she didn't come here for a fight. But all of a sudden, a giant mud monster shows up above her, and that thing doesn't look like the calm and reasonable type. The monster attacks the Lamia, but Dallin steps in just in time and cuts its arm off before dragging the Lamia into cover. They have to stay quiet and hidden until the monster gives up on looking for them, but once it's finally gone, the Lamia asks Dallin what that thing was. He explains that it's a mad earth elemental, and it's probably why all the lizard people who lived here before had to leave. There was an earthquake recently, which may have caused the earth elemental to become like this, and unfortunately, Dallin doesn't think things are going to go back to normal anytime soon. The Lamia's name is Selena, and Dallin has heard that all Lamias are capable of using magic, so he asks if she can too. Selena confirms that she is able to use magic, so Dallin suggests that they should fight together to take it down. Selena is a little flustered by Dallin's suggestion because Lamias are earth monsters, so most of her spells won't be effective against the earth elemental. However, she does have one spell which should be able to damage it, so Dallin comes up with a plan and says he will attack the elemental from the front, so he will need Selena to back him up while he does. They get into position, and Selena is a little nervous to be working together with a human that she just met, but she doesn't have much of a choice, so when Dallin gives the signal, they both run out, and while Dallin holds off the elemental, Selena casts her spell and creates a giant snake which binds the elemental in place. While the elemental is distracted, Dallin charges forward again, and even though Selena couldn't hold it in place for long, she bought more than enough time for Dallin to get within striking range. So he runs up the elemental's body, and by infusing his sword with dragonic energy, he is able to slice the elemental in half, totally defeating it. However, as a result, all that elemental mud turns back into regular mud, and it goes all over the place, covering Selena from head to tail. Dallin rushes over to check if Selena is alright, and she doesn't seem to be hurt, so he just needs to take care of her clothes and get her cleaned up. Later that night, Dallin sets up camp and is preparing dinner for himself and Selena. Selena is surprised that Dallin isn't even slightly scared of her, even though she's a Lamia, so Dallin explains that he has met Lamias before, but even so, Selena is different from those he has met before. Most Lamias are wary of humans and are much more aggressive, but now that he thinks about it, there aren't any Lamia villages nearby, so he's wondering what Selena is doing out here. Selena explains that it is a part of her people's tradition that when you turn 17, you need to leave home and go find yourself a husband, which is why she's away from her village. The Lamia race is cursed, so they only give birth to girls, and on the rare occasion that they do give birth to a boy, it's always a boy of their husband's race. The curse also gives them their snake-like bodies and makes their bodily fluids poisonous, and as you would expect, finding a partner is pretty difficult when there's a good chance they die from touching you. Because of that, she needs to make sure her husband has a body that's strong enough to resist poison, but there aren't many people like that out there. Celaena's mother got lucky and managed to meet the perfect human while on a journey, and both of Celaena's parents got along great. All Dolan says to this is that he's glad Celaena is happy, but that makes her think he's treating her like a child. However, Dolan tells her that he just thinks she's cute when she talks, which gets her all flustered. He pours her a bowl of his soup, and while it may not be as good as the way his mom makes it, he is still pretty confident that Celaena will like it. She takes a sip and she absolutely loves the soup's flavor, so much so that she starts rambling about how great it is. But once she realizes what she's doing, she stops herself and apologizes for getting so excited. Dolan says he's glad she likes it and recalls how he and his family would often sit around a fire like this on cold winter nights and enjoy this soup. Celaena can tell that Dolan genuinely loves his family more than anything, and Dolan can hardly believe he once spent an eternity as a dragon all alone in a cave instead. The next morning, the two's time together has come to an end, so Dolan bids Celaena farewell and wishes her luck in finding a good husband, but before he leaves, he wants to give her a present, and he recalls hearing that Lamia is like life energy, so he pours some of his life energy into Celaena, but it makes her faint almost instantly. Dolan apologizes for doing that all of a sudden as he now realizes that his dragon life force must be a little too strong for Celaena to handle. Once she has recovered, Dolan says he's going to start heading back to his village, and he invites Celaena to come visit him sometime before beginning his journey home. Celaena eventually runs into two male travelers, and this is perfect since she is looking for a husband, but before she could introduce herself, they see her lower half and freak out. Back in Dolan's village, Irie is currently learning how to make magical medicine with Dolan, and the Maguru warns them that mistakes with the measurements can often be life-threatening, so they need to be very careful. Unfortunately, Dolan isn't very good at this, so his magical herb ends up turning into a bowl of smoke. He just can't seem to get the hang of complex procedures like this, but Irie tells him not to be discouraged because he's good at a lot of other things, plus he's really handsome, and Dolan appreciates the compliment, but he admits that he isn't skilled when it comes to following complicated instructions. Maguru says Irie's magical herb turned out perfectly, so Irie is done for the day and can go outside if she wants. Irie would have preferred to stay inside with Dolan, but she decides to go help her mom out since she has some free time. Dolan doesn't know what to do about his lack of dexterity because back when he was a dragon, medicine wasn't really necessary, so he never had to learn how to make it. Maguru doesn't know about his past life, but even if he isn't good at making magical medicine, he is still talented enough that she is sure he will eventually get the hang of it, so for now she wants to teach him how to turn his failed magic herb into a poison antidote. A little while later, Dolan is invited to have lunch with the rest of Irie's family, and though he didn't want to intrude, they insisted that he eat with them. So they begin the meal by praying to the goddess of nature, Merail, and it turns out that Dolan used to friends with Merail in his past life, although he hasn't seen her for a long time now. After lunch, Dolan is in a rush to leave because he is late for his next training session, and along the way he runs into Miu, and she remarks that he seems to be in quite a hurry. Dolan explains that he's late for practice, and Miu is disappointed since she was hoping to give him some fresh milk, but it looks like he doesn't have the time. In that short moment of indecision, Miu already squeezed him a fresh mug of milk, and it's too good to pass up, so Dolan graciously drinks it and thanks her before running off the training session. A little while later, Dolan arrives on the hill where Albert is instructing a couple of the kids on how to use a spear, and he apologizes for being late, but Albert says it is fine since he knows Dolan had magic practice with Maguru. The kids are all excited to show Dolan the new skills they have learned, but Dolan says they can show him after they take a break since they've been working hard for a long time now. Just then, Dolan senses the presence of a monster in the woods nearby, but he doesn't want to scare the kids, so he ignores it for the time being and goes on with practice. Later that night, Dolan heads out into the forest to investigate the monster presence he felt earlier, and oddly enough, he seems to recognize it, but the only person he knows who would match the description is Celaena, and there's no way she would be around here. He heads deeper into the forest, and to his surprise, he sees Celaena camping out in the forest. Celaena is just as surprised to see him, but she accidentally stumbles back and knocks over the hot water, so Dolan rushes in to save her from getting hurt. Celaena is glad he saved her, but she's still naked, so she asks Dolan not to look. However, Dolan's eyes are wide open, and he begins evaluating every inch of Celaena's body, coming to the conclusion that she's a solid 9 out of 10 waifu. Celaena once again begs Dolan to stop looking, and she can't believe he feels no shame in a situation like this, but Dolan sees nothing to be ashamed about. Dolan ends up getting slapped in the face by Celaena, and he apologizes for not taking her feelings into consideration, but Celaena just wants to forget what happened, so she says it's fine. Now that that's over, Dallin asks what Celaena is doing here since she told him she was heading south to search for a husband. And while that was initially the plan, every guy she tried to meet would run away from her in fear, so she came looking for Dolan, since he's the only person she has met who wasn't scared of her. Dolan was actually hoping to see Celaena again, and he says he is willing to do anything to help her find a husband, but then he thinks about it for a second and asks Celaena if she would be fine with living here with him for a while. Celaena is in disbelief and says she couldn't possibly do something like that because she thinks she would scare the people in the village, but Dolan assures her that it won't be a problem since there are already a bunch of demi-humans living in the village and Miyu, for example, is loved by everyone. The villagers may be wary of Celaena at first since she's a newcomer, but he's sure they will eventually warm up to her since she has a kind and gentle personality. And Dolan would personally enjoy having her around, although the way he says it makes it seem like he is courting Celaena. Celaena loves the idea of living with Dolan in a human village, but there's also a different reason she came looking for him. She was hoping he would share some of his life energy with her again because it was the most delicious life energy she had ever received, and Dolan is more than happy to give her some whenever she wants. He extends his hand to share some of his energy with her, and she seems to like it a lot, so he tells her she can have even more when they start living together, but for now, he has a plan to introduce her to the villagers. A few days later, the town guards are investigating some strange occurrences because this is the third day in a row that someone left a bunch of hunted food out for them. The tracks on the ground lead them to the conclusion that it must have been some kind of snake monster that did this, and the only thing that fits the description would be a lamia. A meeting is held to discuss their plan of action moving forward because they don't know for sure if this monster is a threat to them or not. After all, it's been leaving offerings for them, and it hasn't caused any harm yet, so there's no reason to be hostile towards it. But even with that being the case, Balin still says they should go out into the forest and kill it. The other villagers tell them to calm down because even if they agree to kill it, lamias are pretty strong, so they would need to call for reinforcement from the capital. Dolan overhears their conversation while he's working in the fields, and he hadn't realized how much people fear lamias, but he is sure they'd change their opinion if they actually got to know Celaena. Just then, Magru speaks up and tells Balin that he's overreacting because she doesn't think the monster will cause them any harm, however, just to be sure. She asks Irie to bring her fortune-telling basket, and upon inspection of today's fortune, the lamia is a good sign for the village. Dolan hears this and is excited, so later that day, he runs into the forest to tell Celaena that they can move forward with the next phase of the plan. The villagers no longer want to kill her, and the hunt offerings helped make public opinion positive, so there's only one more thing they need to do to get them to accept her. The next day, Balin organizes a meeting with the soldiers in town, and he tells them that they need to stay on guard because they are the only people keeping the village safe from danger, so he wants to hold an emergency training session just so everyone is in perfect condition. For this meeting, Dolan was called out, along with all the heavy hitters of the garrison, and this is exactly what Dolan was hoping would happen so he can complete his plan. Galen and Melita, as well as the priestess Letitia, are all present, and Letitia holds a lot of value in the village because she is able to perform healing miracles. But more than that, she is considered the messenger of the goddess Mirael, so if she arbitrarily declares Celaena is evil, there will be no way she gets accepted into the village. Everything now hinges on how well Celaena's acting skills are, so she needs to pretend to rescue Dolan from danger to get everyone to like her. Dolan plans to intentionally run into some monsters to give her the opportunity, so she is patiently waiting in the bushes for Dolan's signal. Just then, the soldier comes running out of the woods and begins yelling that the monster is here, but he isn't talking about Celaena, he's talking about an armored bear. Balin can't believe there's an armored bear this close to the edge of the forest, but he orders his men not to attack it because they will be killed in one shot if they do. He orders everyone to run away, but his son trips over his own feet and falls to the ground, so he's about to get slashed by the bear. Dolan rushes in to save him, but unless he uses his dragon powers, there's no way the boy will make it out of this alive. At the last second, just as Dolan is jumping in front of the boy, Celaena jumps on top of the two of them and takes the hit instead. She's got enough health that it didn't kill her, but she's got a pretty nasty wound on her back, so she uses her cursed eyes to order the bear to return to the forest. Balin and the others are even more shocked than before, but while Celaena is checking up on the boy, Dolan chooses to ignore everything she just did and orders both Dolan and the boy to get away from Celaena so he can kill her. Dolan can tell that the boy is scared, so he tells him to get up and run back to his father, but Dolan refuses to leave Celaena's side until he knows she will be treated properly. Melita tells Balin that it did look like the Lamia went out of its way to save them, Balin still insists that it is a dangerous monster, so he isn't going to let her get away. Dylan still refuses to leave her side, so Balin asks Celaena if she was the one who was leaving offerings in front of their village, but while she tries to confirm it, Celaena accidentally bites her tongue. The way she gets embarrassed is really cute, but Balin maintains his composure and asks why she would do that and why she decided to save 2 humans out of nowhere. Celaena properly introduces herself and then lowers her head to ask that she be allowed to live in this village. She began a journey in accordance with her people's tradition, but traveling alone has been far lonelier than she ever could have imagined, so she wanted to live with other people. And as for why she chose to save the boy, she feels like his family would be greatly saddened if he was killed, so she didn't want to let that happen. The people no longer think Celaena is scary, but Dylan still isn't sure they should trust her, so he looks to Letitia to see what she thinks, and to his surprise, Letitia is currently receiving a message from the goddess Mirelle. She tells everyone that Mirelle told her that Celaena is not an evil monster, so they should live with her in harmony. So she goes over to Celaena and tells her she's welcome to stay in the village. Celaena is glad to hear that, but the severity of her wounds finally gets to her, so she faints from the blood loss and she needs immediate medical attention. A little while later, Celaena's wounds have been treated, and she has officially been welcomed as a member of the village. They've even made a house for Celaena to live in, and she is really excited, so she heads in to check it out. On the bed, she finds a little stuffed mushroom, and she absolutely loves it, so she thanks everyone one more time for their kindness. The mushroom cushion was Balin's idea, and it's his way of apologizing for being so aggressive towards her when she saved his son's life, and he is still deeply sorry for that. There's a lot they still don't know about Lamias, but they say they will do everything they can to accommodate and make Celaena's stay here as pleasant as possible. And now that everyone has truly accepted her, Dalin extends his hand to greet Celaena as an official member of the Varen village. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.